Hi, I'm Ashli Sambaluk, and thanks for coming to this NFLC Virtual Summit powered by Pearl session called What Are We Doing Today? This session is for anybody who's ever been asked this question in class and may or may not know how to answer it. Our session goals together are to be able to explain how daily learning targets benefit learners and educators, to be able to create quality daily learning targets from your district curriculum, and to be able to implement daily learning targets in your lesson plans. To achieve our session goals, we'll investigate why daily learning targets are beneficial, what makes a quality daily learning target, and how to use daily learning targets in your lesson cycle. To kick us off with a quote from Atkin, Black, and Coffey's 2001 research, students should be able to answer three basic questions. Where am I going? Where am I now? And how do I close the gap? These are three questions that students are always wondering. Any learner is always wondering whether or not they realize it. Some students ask the question, what are we doing today? And exposes that they don't have the answers here. So next time your students ask you that, I hope that it's a temperature gauge and you'll be able to understand how to answer that question, or maybe even keep them from having to ask it. Learning targets provide a map for both educators and learners. Students are not the only ones who need a map. Teachers, as well as parents and administrators, benefit from a well-defined learning map. At first, it may sound like more work to you, and more work for the sake of work is the last thing we need, and it's the last thing I would want to ask you to do. If I'm presenting something, it's because I truly think that it makes the world a better place, your life easier, and students' lives better. So let's investigate how students and teachers win when daily learning targets are involved and why they're well worth the effort. So our first session learning goal together, I can explain the importance of daily learning targets. Let's focus on learners. What does the research say about it? It's not just my opinion, but Rick Stiggins, who's an assessment and grading expert, tells us that students can hit any target they can see that will hold still for them. That makes sense. Of course, if we tell them what the target is, what the goal is, we put it in front of them, then they have an opportunity to actually aim at it. But Marzano did some work on it in 2005 as well, and has the research to prove that students who can identify what they're learning significantly outscore those who cannot. So research tells us that our students need to be able to identify what they're learning, what their goal is. Okay, so research and theory say one thing, but what about classroom application? So if you're curious, there's a great video on the TEL domains. There are a lot of videos out there, but this one that's linked here in the QR code, just scan it if you'd like to see this good 4-minute video on TEL Domain 2 learning experience, focusing specifically on learning targets. But I'll tell you a couple of things that really stood out to me from the teachers who were interviewed in this video. So they noticed that learners are less likely to get distracted during a lesson. They noticed that learners gain a sense of control. So specifically, one person who was interviewed in the video, a world language supervisor, Alyssa Villarreal, said learning targets and learning objectives are really important to help students stay engaged and focused. Often students are held hostage in the classroom, not really knowing why they're doing what they're doing or where the teacher is headed. So that really stood out to me because I think that's what the question, what are we doing today, really points out. We don't want to hold them hostage. We spend a lot of time planning the learning. So what's the one key we can find to make sure they're seeing the connection that's so obvious to us from the background work that we did? Okay. Something else that the teachers in the video pointed out is that students are able to commit to the goal and they're able to understand expectations. So another teacher said, I also want them to know that all the activities we're doing throughout the day will help them to reach that objective at the end of the lesson. So again, we spent a lot of time carefully crafting these activities. We want them to know why we're doing them. They deserve to know that. They don't have the benefit of the background time that we did. So let's set a goal. Let's communicate that to them. Learners are able to apply what they're learning with meaning, and learners can take action. I really love this quote from Daphne Morin where she said, when my students know that they have learning targets, they're motivated because they understand I will be able to communicate and I don't have to wait. They know exactly what they are going to be able to do in that day. Okay, so really good for learners. That's probably enough for you, but let's go the extra mile and talk about why it's good for educators too. So teachers who truly understand what they want their students to accomplish will almost surely be more instructionally successful than teachers whose understanding of hoped-for student accomplishments is murky. Naturally, when you know exactly where you're going, you're able to be a lot more focused with your goals and your resources and your tasks as well, because there are a lot of things fighting for our attention and our time, right, teachers? So if you read my abstract before watching this video, then you know that I value daily learning targets. Number one, because they saved my sanity. It took me a long time to figure out how to lesson plan for 6 different preps. And as a result, I spent a long time lost in the recesses of Pinterest, endlessly looking for resources on various themes, which is great to look for a theme, but wow, when you search a theme in Pinterest, boy, can you find a lot of options out there. So the time I could have saved myself if I had first slowed down just long enough to figure out why I needed a resource and what that goal would be would have been incredible, because that makes it so much easier to target in on a specific resource that I need with my students. So focus your lesson, learning targets focus your lesson, they focus your resources, they save your brain. We do a lot of creating. They help you successfully meet your district expectations because you don't have this murky idea of where you're going. Everything you do is in step toward a goal. You're headed in the right direction. Learning targets are student-friendly, so they're admin-friendly. So they quickly communicate to your admin how the learners are going, and it also gives them the tools to follow along, especially when they stop by for a lesson. And they help parents understand how their learners are growing. So it's also parent-friendly language, and they can see students can communicate exactly what they learned today. If they forget by the time they get home, at least the parents can see something in parent-friendly language to know what their students did, and they can ask them about it. Okay, so we're coming to marker number 1, session goals. Can you explain how daily learning targets benefit learners and educators? We have a scale of 1 to 5 here. 1, I don't understand at all. I need to pause and rewatch it. 5, I can explain it to someone else. I got this. And I hope you will. Okay, you're on the honor system since I can't see you, but go ahead and show me. All right, I hope you took it seriously because I'm going to test you even though it's the honor system. So before you continue, I'd like you to prove it. Write a 1-sentence explanation of the importance of daily learning targets for learners and or educators. If you have a pen and a notebook, jot it down, just 1 sentence, a sticky note, or type it in your phone. Bonus points if you type it in a tweet and tweet out your thoughts. You can share it with me and NFLC. Love to hear from you. Or if you're writing it on a sticky note, take a picture of yourself with it. I'd love to see you too. And just to be fair, because I know you have a lot on your plate, I'm going to give you 1 minute together with me during this time to write your 1-sentence explanation. See you in a minute. Halfway there. If you're a really fast writer, you can skip ahead or get your tweet in. Five. If you need some more processing time, go ahead and pause it. Otherwise, see you on Twitter. Okay, that brings us to our next learning target. I can create quality daily learning targets from my district curriculum. So in order to be able to create daily learning targets, let's investigate a common misconception that might be standing in the way of great lesson level learning targets. So principal and author Heather Clayton addresses some misconceptions in her article, which is in an issue of Making the Standards Come Alive. And I'd like to focus on a specific one that's pretty common in second language classrooms. The misconception: learning targets describe the activity that students will complete. They do not. So a non-example, this is a non-example. I can complete a worksheet that uses the verb comer to say what I and my classmates eat. That's the activity. What is the actual learning target or the goal that we would want our students to be able to maybe do through that? I can ask others what they like to eat. I can tell others what I like to eat. Non-example, I can write an email using the past tense. That's what students are doing. That's the tense maybe that they're in, depending on if they can't avoid it. And an example of an actual learning target, the goal, I can describe what I did on my summer vacation. Now that might be in the form of an email sent to someone, and naturally it's in the past tense if it's something they did, but what we actually want them to be able to do is describe something that they did on summer vacation. So why is the goal not the task? Well, tasks have to be justified in terms of the learning aims that they serve. So the task is serving a learning goal. And they can work well only if opportunities for students to communicate their evolving understanding are built into the planning. So our task, we tell our students what the goal is, what they're going to be able to communicate about and do. Then we build tasks which lead to that, and we're consistently reminding them how that's helping them get to that goal. And they have opportunities to see how they're doing and see how their understanding is growing as well. Okay, so now we know what a quality learning target is not. What are the elements of a quality lesson level learning target? Well, they're designed backward from your curriculum and standards. They're built around a language function. So that's what you saw in the examples. Ask, tell others, describe, purpose of your language. They address a mode of communication, and they address your student proficiency level. So a quality lesson level learning target is designed backwards from curriculum and standards. That means you have already got your unit learning targets, those big ones that are enduring over the whole unit, your essential questions, your acceptable evidence that's going to show that they understood those, that they have achieved transfer. We're here in step 3, learning events, where you get to plan the learning experiences and instruction. So we don't do this until we get to step 3. Then we can design backwards from those big learning targets that are in Unit 1. So I've got an example here from my curriculum. This is a big unit level learning target. I can express and support an opinion or preference about a vacation experience orally and in writing with supporting statements. There's a lot going on there. So we're going to break it down over several days to give them the tools to be able to do this big goal. Okay. A quality lesson level learning target is built around a language function. Well, we have to know and fully understand what language functions are. So it is what it sounds like. Functions are the global tasks the learner can perform in the language. So it's why you're bothering to talk, why you're bothering to read and investigate. What's the goal that you want to achieve? What are you doing with your language? Some examples, well, we talked about ask and answer questions, describe, maintain a conversation, initiate a conversation, create, narrate, describe, make inferences. If you'd like to learn more about language functions or some other things like text type that are important to student proficiency, you can scan this QR code here to get to this document, which comes from Actful. Okay, so here's my stab at a lesson level learning target that comes from the big unit goal we saw before. Let's simply start with, I can determine a location abroad I would like to visit from an authentic resource. So is determine a language function? Do you read information in order to make a decision? There we are. I'm reading something to determine where I want to go. It's a good problem to have. A quality lesson level learning target addresses a mode of communication. So we're either working in the interpretive, where they're reading some input, or listening, watching a video, listening to a podcast, or interpreting some intake orally there. Or we're working in the interpersonal, where we're reading and writing to each other, or listening and speaking to each other, negotiating for meaning. I see your reaction. We're working together on that. Or it's presentational, where I'm making a message and sending it out to you all, like today. It can be written or it can be spoken, or something like here where I have a mix of both. So to look at my example that I'm building off of my big unit level learning target, I can determine a location abroad I would like to visit from an authentic resource. So if I'm interpreting information from an infographic or an ad, making a decision, I'm interpreting, I'm reading. Or listening if it's an audio ad. A quality lesson level learning target addresses student proficiency level. So I definitely, if I'm doing interpretive, I want to make sure that I'm giving my students something that they can understand at the level where they are. So simple sentences, if it's a novice student, getting a little bit bigger series of connected sentences for the intermediate, I can show them more. I want to be giving them something that's at their level, maybe encouraging them to level up if we're in the interpersonal, adding some more detail. But I need to know where they are so that I give them something they can comprehend. If you would like to know more about this chart or what students can do at different proficiency levels, you can check out the Necessful, Actful, Can-Do statements. Guessed it, there's a QR code for that. You can see the document right away where this graphic comes from. Okay, time to check in again. Now, I know you can explain how daily learning targets benefit from learners and educators because hopefully I'm seeing them on Twitter right now. But I also want to know how you feel about being able to create quality daily learning targets from your district curriculum. So, you know you're on the honor system, but you know I'm going to test you. Go ahead. What do you think? Awesome. Can you prove it? Here's our example unit learning target again. Now we need some lesson level daily learning targets. Knowing what you know about quality lesson level learning targets, can you write at least one that would help students get to this point, to being able to do the unit learning target? This is a good point to pause the video, take a minute to think of at least one, maybe two or three. See you in a second. All right, welcome back. Here's some examples that I created with some teachers on my team. You've seen that one before, determine a location abroad I would like to visit. I'm also going to give the students some input where they can list destinations that they saw an authentic resource that appealed to them. And then maybe they are going to be able to do some output now, give their opinion about options from something they saw. Okay, then we're going to go back and get a little bit more input, doing things they like to do when they travel. Okay, then output, do something with that, express preferences. So you see how each one of these is very simple, one at a time, but they're all building toward, up at the top, my big unit learning target. All right, last session learning target. I can implement daily learning targets in my lesson plan. So you understand the value, you know what makes one, you can create them. How do you use them? In order to be able to use them in your lesson plan, we need to know what makes a great lesson cycle. So according to Donna Clemente and Laura Terrell in the excellent book, The Keys to Planning for Learning, if you don't have a copy, run to Amazon now or the Actable bookstore. So we know that in a lesson cycle, you need to gain attention, activate prior knowledge, provide input, elicit performance, provide feedback, and close. If you're curious about any of the purpose for any of these, I've got some ideas for you here, some explanation here. We start with our learning target, give them some comprehensible input where we gain their attention, give them real world context, give them time to process, and then they need to do the learning target so we can see we're eliciting their performance. Okay, reflect and close. So you can pause here and read a little bit more of my thoughts on the reasons behind these areas if you'd like, if you're interested in this topic. If you're feeling good about it, come on with me. Let's pause and think about that reflection and closure section real quickly. Remember your reflection. Remember to do your reflection with students on the session learning target. So just like we're doing together, we've got to do that with students in the classroom as well. Do you remember that principal and author Heather Clayton and her common misconceptions? Well, she has one about this section too. So common misconception, posting a learning target is enough. It is not enough. We've got to get the learners involved in owning that learning target. So maybe have them tell a partner what we're doing, have them stop and reflect on their progress, have them prove it. And we've got to continually review the learning target and explain how it connects to each task. It may not be so obvious to students, but we can show them why they're doing what they're doing, how it's helping them get to that goal of communication. Students can assess themselves only when they have a sufficiently clear picture of the targets that the learning is meant to attain. Many of them don't have a picture, and they've become used to receiving classroom teaching as just an arbitrary sequence of exercises with no overarching rationale. Even though we spend a lot of time making that plan, they're not seeing it. When pupils do acquire such an overview, they become more committed and more effective as learners, as the research we've investigated has continued to prove us. Here's another piece of evidence. Okay, final check-in here. You can explain, you can create, can you implement? Give me what you're thinking, and then you'll be able to prove it. Okay, so here's my lesson level learning target. This is a new one, still working toward that same example unit learning target goal. I can give my opinion about what makes a great vacation destination. Okay, that's presentational here. I'm giving my opinion, not necessarily taking your feedback on it. So here are some activities. Let me move my face out of the way if I can. Here are some activities that we might do in class. I'd like you to take some time with them, see if you can match them into the category that I would have chosen. Which one do you think I chose to activate their prior knowledge and provide input? Which one do you think I chose to do input processing and student performance and then reflect and close? All of these I planned working toward my lesson level goal of my students being able to give their opinion about what makes a great vacation destination. Pause it, and then I'll tell you what I chose. Welcome back. Here's what I chose. I first gave students some input of an interesting organizer telling them the favorite destinations of French vacationers. So hopefully that gained their attention. It definitely gave them some input in a very comprehensible way. Then I wanted them to do some processing with it. So we learned from that infographic that Spain is where French travelers love to go abroad, number one. So I have a simple, comprehensible article on the top 5 reasons to travel to Spain in French. And we go through each reason together, and students kind of line themselves up going from, yes, that convinces me, to, no, I'm not interested in that physically. So for me, one of the reasons in the article is that the beaches are beautiful. I would be way as far smushed up against the wall as I could get for that convinces me, but not every student is. Then so they're able to process and reason through all the things we think about their reasons, opinions, and they're still getting input. They're getting vocabulary that they might want to choose and self-select what matters to them. Now, I'm going to elicit their performance. I want them, right, to give their opinion. So I'm going to have them each write on the sticky note what they believe makes a great destination to travel to on vacation, what they love the most. Maybe it's beaches, maybe it's food. Okay, and then I'm going to have them put their sticky notes on the board and silently process what one another has said, organizing their sticky notes into like groups of preference. And then we've learned something about our class as a whole, where we like to travel. Would we be good travelers together? Maybe, maybe not. And of course, finally, to reflect and close, I'm going to have them do just what you've done with me. Look at our daily learning target. How comfortable and confident do they feel about being able to give their opinion about what makes a great vacation destination? That's it. Thanks for coming to my session. I hope you found it helpful, and I'd love to connect with you on Twitter to continue the conversation. Have a great day.